Welcome to the Magic of Positive Thinking, a podcast hosted by Norb Savannasini, founder of AmericanEagle.com, and writer Al Edwards. Norb, the mics are hot, and so are we.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day today. Thank God that spring is here. Thank God for this gift he gives us every day. And enjoy your present, people, because it is a present.
It really is. And if you live in Chicago or you grew up here, you know that spring takes sometimes a long time to get here, doesn't it?
Yeah, we had a really mild winter, very little snow, but spring was a mama.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully it's here to stay. I get fooled every year. The first 70 degree day, I'm like, oh, it's finally here, and then the next day it's 30.
Yeah, right.
So I always get fooled. So, how you been?
Good.
Well, friends, this is number 38. Our wonderful producer, Brian, just informed us. 38 and going strong. I can't believe it. 38 episodes. So we hope you've enjoyed them. We've got a fun show for you today, and the title is 5 Great Life Lessons from Rude People. From rude people. Nobody likes to be around rude people. But I was thinking about this and discussing it with Norb, and you know what? We can actually learn some important things from rude people. What is
No. It's. I think it's something that's happening in today's society more and more. Maybe because of all the things to supposedly worry about.
Right.
And there seems to be a little more rudeness. Yes, there seems to be, which is a shame because there's no need for it,
Right.
And being rude is something that just will make life more unpleasant. So try to think, if you have those tendencies, try to think not to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, unfortunately, when you do run into it, there's some great reminders about life and how you want to treat other people. So let's get right into it. There's one thing that I have to admit still bothers me, but I'm really trying to work through it. And that is, I'm the kind of guy that will let you in traffic. And I always expect, because try and be a polite person, I always expect someone to just wave and say thank you. And sometimes that doesn't happen. And I used to get very, very upset when I would let someone in traffic and they didn't wave. They would just zoom in and be on their way. And I thought to myself, how rude. And then all of a sudden it occurred to me that this is a reminder from the universe that I let that person in not because I wanted to thank you, but because that's the kind of person I want to be, a guy that lets people in.
Yeah, what's interesting is we haven't talked about this before. Like, we're sick of saying this, but we never practice this thing. We just barely know what we're going to talk about. But yeah, that really rubs me the wrong way too. And I'm almost the other extreme. If somebody does let me in, I want to make sure that person knows that I'm waving a hi.
Yes.
Because it bothers me that they would think I didn't thank him.
Right.
Yeah.
So you over-exaggerate. You wave maniacally or open
No, not like that, but I just want to make sure that I get the nod from them that they saw.
Oh, that they acknowledged you were thanking.
That I acknowledged it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Yeah.
And it's been, I talked about in a previous show how, when we all get stuck in traffic because there's an accident, instead of getting angry, try and have compassion for those people who are in the accident and say to yourself, I hope they're okay, or hope nobody's hurt, or, not too much is wrong, kind of thing. It's a different mindset.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting you said that because today I had to go about 15 miles. And I have hit a lot of red lights in my life, but today was one of the top days. And it really got to me. I could see myself getting really frustrated because I just couldn't believe that every light I hit was a red light, And I had an appointment, and I made it actually 2 minutes late, which wasn't that bad. But it's just interesting how the mood can change because of things you can't control.
Right. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, that's one of the 5 great lessons from rude people that we're going to talk about today. So I remember hearing a great positive speaker. I forgot who it was, but he said instead of them being stoplights where you have to stop, consider them go lights. It's a different mentality of focusing on the go part, the green, and not the red part.
Yeah, it's like the hot water heater kind of thing.
Yeah, the hot water heater.
Yeah.
For those friends who may not remember that, it's actually not a hot water heater. It's a cold water heater. Because if you already had hot water, you wouldn't need to heat it up.
Exactly.
Right? What were you going to say, Norb?
When you said that about things you can't control,
Right.
I read a book this weekend, and I don't plug books or anything like this, but this one is just a phenomenal book, and it has to do exactly that, and it's called Same as Ever, and it's by a guy by the name of Morgan Housel or Housel. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's just a great book. I recommend it highly because the tagline is a guide to what never changes. And it's just a great book because it fits the thing about the red light.
Yeah.
There's some things in life that just never change. You're not going to change them. Nobody's going to change them.
Right.
And they happen. It's the same as ever. So when you said that, it sparked.
Yeah, absolutely.
That.
Yeah. No, that's great. And it's same as ever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Check that out, everybody. I'm going to look at that. I wonder if I always listen to Audible because I'm in my car a lot.
And you can't read that well either.
Well, I can't read while I'm driving too well.
Right. Yeah.
I'm a really bad reader in general.
Yeah.
But people say that to me. Are you a reader? And I said, no, I'm a writer. Last thing I want to do is go home and read all day long because I've been writing all day kind of thing. So, but anyway, the traffic thing is, at least for me, is a spiritual lesson, a reminder from the universe that when someone doesn't say thank you, I'm actually trying to be grateful to them for teaching me that that's the kind of person I aspire to be, letting people in traffic. So there's always spiritual lessons everywhere, right, Norb?
Well, yeah. And I think, it's amazing how people react in traffic. You hear about these guys that are just go, totally off kill.
Road rage.
And they just get mad. And I've had, like everybody has, I think once in a while, hopefully not that often, but maybe every 5 years, you'll meet some guy because something you did, which wasn't even anything bad, but they get mad and they race towards you and they start cussing and they start giving you the finger and you wonder what the heck is that about?
Right.
I mean, is this that big of a problem?
Right.
And you read about road rage all the time, and unluckily, sometimes it happens that people get killed over stuff.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Which is really crazy.
This is off topic, but it's one of my favorite stories, and I want you to share it because it's such a great story, and I think people will be entertained by it. Tell the story of when you were in the car with your mother and your wonderful wife, Charlene, and you got pulled over for your seatbelt. Tell that story.
Well, one of the things that is common is when you find yourself in a situation when you really have done nothing wrong, but you're accused of doing something wrong.
Right.
And, technically, this is in an instance where I have to confess I was guilty. But the situation was that I had a nice big car, and I had my mother, who was in a wheelchair, and she came down from her condo, and I put the wheelchair in the trunk. And then I also had my mother-in-law in the car and my wife. And leaving the parking lot of my mother's area, I was driving down the street, maybe 2 blocks away, maybe doing 20 miles an hour. obviously I'm there with my wife and my mother and my mother-in-law. I'm not going to drive fast, and it was a regular street. And this cop, this policeman, with his lights and everything else, stopped me. And I said, "What's the matter, officer?" He says, "Well, you're not wearing your seatbelt." And I said, very politely, I said, yes, you're right. I forgot. I always wear my seatbelt, which I do, by the way. I'm a pilot, and I really believe in seatbelts. I've always had them. So he says, "Well, did you ever hear of click it or ticket?" And I said, "Yes, officer, I have. But you have to understand, I have my mother here. She was in a wheelchair. I have my mother-in-law. And by the way, I wasn't a young person. I mean, that young, probably in my mid-60s at this time. And of course, my mother and mother-in-law were probably, close to 90. And my wife, similar age to me. And obviously, we weren't hot rodding or anything. and I said, I explained to him, and he says, "Well, there's a law that's called click it or ticket." I said, "Well, I understand, sir, but you're a judge and right now." And he says, "Well, I have to give you a ticket." And I probably was a little rude to the gentleman at this time, and I asked him if this was one of his proud moments. That he was going to talk to his family about at dinner.
That was the punchline I wanted everyone to hear. You asked him, "Is it you go home and tell your family?"
Yeah, and he wasn't happy then because I wasn't happy either, obviously, and he gave me the ticket. It was $50, and what I did, which is I if you're ever unjustly stop for something and given a ticket, this is really kind of an interesting thing to do. You'll have a lot of fun. And again, I'm remembering and I'm
I know
laughing,
it's coming, by the way.
And I get a pleasure out of remembering this. So I went to the bank and I got $50 worth of pennies. And I emptied each little tube into a box, and I took it to court. And when I gave it to the lady, she says, "Well, you can't pay with this." I said, "Well, this is U.S.
It's legal tender."
Legal tender, I said. And so she actually went back to see somebody else in the back, and somebody else must have told them, you got to take it. So she took it. And I said, "Aren't you going to count it?" She said, "No." So I asked for a receipt, and I left, which kind of made me happy because it was not just what the guy did to me,
right?
Because under the circumstances, I think a policeman, like any person that serves the public, should have a little bit of common sense.
Yeah.
So that's the story, fellas.
Yeah, and the whole point of why wanting Norb to tell that story is that he said to the policeman, "You go home and tell your family about what you did today. Are you proud of that? You look in the mirror and say, I gave a ticket to a senior citizen who had, at least two elderly people in the car in a wheelchair, not even a warning." I mean, a warning would have been appropriate.
Yeah, it's just so silly. I mean, there's so many. I was doing literally 20, 25 miles an hour, and I've seen a lot of people do some crazy stuff on the road, and why stop somebody like me, because I wasn't wearing my seatbelt.
Right.
And I forgot. I totally forgot because I had this rigmarole of, helping the people.
Right, right. Anyway, that's a classic Norb story that we wanted to throw in as a little bonus today. So back to our topic. The number 2 great life lesson from rude people is it's a great reminder of the golden rule. And of course, we all know the golden rule: treat people like you want to be treated yourself. And I know you talk about that a lot, Norb. When someone is rude to you, take it as a reminder of how it feels So when you feel the need to be rude or you just want to be rude to someone, hopefully it will give us pause and make sure that we don't treat someone because we know it doesn't feel good when they do it to us.
Yeah, and when you have, I always tell people that, the golden rule for me is the most important rule there is in humanity. I've been very fortunate. I've traveled quite a bit, and I've never had any trouble, except for a couple of people that are just jerks. I've never had any trouble, talking, getting along with people, and even when I don't understand the language at all. But if you have, a smile and be nice to people when you approach them, it's like, 99% pleasant.
Right.
So the golden rule, I think, would probably solve, again, 99% of all problems in the world,
I always take the approach, I've said this in previous shows, that I like to treat everyone like they're the most important person on earth, and it has never gone wrong for me.
Yeah. No, I'm not that great, but I believe you should treat them like you want to be treated,
Yeah, it's just a great reminder because everyone's been on the wrong end of rudeness.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't feel good, and it makes you depressed and negative. So I think it's a good reminder for all of us that if we feel crabby or irritable and we want to try and be rude, it's a good reminder to remember the golden rule and say, I'm not going to treat someone that way because I know how it feels when people treat me that way.
And when somebody is rude to you, I had something interesting happen to me a long time ago that just reminds me of this.
Did it involve a seatbelt?
No, it didn't.
Oh, okay.
No, but this was a lady that actually was giving instructions. I was traveling somewhere, and I went up to the booth and I asked her a question, and she was just the rudest, worst person you could ever meet. And I looked back of me and I said, "Is there a horse here?" And all of a sudden, she looked at me. And she had that look of, wow, she like realized what she did. And she said, I'm sorry. And she helped me.
Wow. How about that?
Yeah. So I always remember that. Yeah. Is there a horse here?
That's funny. That kind of shook her to reality.
Yeah, it shook her to reality. Yeah.
That's funny. I like that. Well, friends, another great tip of the show today, if you ever are rude, if someone's rude to you, ask them if there's a horse behind you.
Yeah. I mean, it works.
And maybe they'll shake him into
in a nice way. Is there a horse here? Why would you act like that?
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny. The third one actually is something that Norb brought up a few minutes ago, and that is that when someone is rude to you, it's them and not you. You do not have to internalize someone's negativity. It's their problem.
Yeah, and I printed something out before we came out, which fits that, because by controlling your emotions, you really make your life a lot better. And if you don't let these people bother you, just don't let them.
Right.
It works out for the best. We're talking. I mean, we're in the internet business here, and obviously, we're very, very much aware of social media and how it's affecting the whole world, actually. And it's just in these days of social media, it has become a violent and cruel form of torture when you do it to another human being. Most of these bullies are able to remain anonymous, which makes it more sinister in some ways, because there's no one to be held accountable. The person smiling at you from across the room could actually be the person who is sending you vile messages. So the thing you have to remember is that you cannot let these people or these groups bother you. There's a story here that I want to tell you because it's very good, because I have friends that are in their 80s, and they actually have a parallel to this story that I'm going to read to you. And this is some years ago, I came across the stories of two ladies who had both been diagnosed with the same terminal disease and had both been given 3 months to live. One of these ladies I met, but the other I didn't because she had taken the doctor's word to heart, lost hope, and passed on a few days before the 3 months were up.
Wow.
The other lady, however, though obviously frightened, rejected the doctor's diagnosis. She had 3 young children and was determined not to leave them. She went on an emotional journey to discover that the cause of her illness and went on to heal herself. 14 years later, I am told she's still alive and kicking. It brings to mind a man I met who helped me a lot when I started my own conscious spiritual journey at the age of 19. And basically, he told me that people's actions come from a subconscious level, whether they're religious fanatics or atheists or anything in between. The physical and mental functions are driven from this core belief. Now, from a personal standpoint, I have a few friends that are in their 80s. And a couple of them, believe it or not, have had cancer for years. And they don't care. They just don't care.
They don't validate it.
Yeah, they don't validate it. And it's amazing to me that by doing that, these guys that are given 4 or 5 months, 6 months, they just ignore the hell with it. You know, we just keep going. And I can see where it works because it's happened in my lifetime with the people I know. So, you know, again, here this guy says, I found very interesting things that so many young people today are exhibiting stress, anxiety, depression, and sometimes even suicidal tendencies. The future generation were severely impacted through this enforced lack of freedom to make their own choices. Just think of that.
Wow.
You know, with that, I want to reintroduce something that we talked about, I think, in the first 10 shows. And it had a lot of impact on a lot of people, and a lot of people didn't listen to it. So I want to tell it again. The NSA had a study on children. This, by the way, this was on 2023. It wasn't that long ago. How traditional schooling reduces creative spark.
This was a study by NASA, as I recall.
Right.
NASA, yeah.
Now, they wanted to understand the nature of creative genius and commission a study led by a gentleman by the name of George Land. The focus was on young children. And the amazing thing about it is that when children are born, up to the age of 5 before they go to kindergarten, they're basically geniuses. Like 97% of them are tested to be geniuses. And the reason for it, anybody who's listening, this is the most important part, is because their mind hasn't been polluted by things that society and even the parents teach them. I think the greatest thing you can do to a child is not to tell them many things. Let them come up with solutions.
Right.
The children's have a mind, again, from going back to the reason we do this show, The Strangest Secret. The mind is a soil, and you can grow anything in that. So when you put impositions on that mind little by little, by the time the kid's 21, there's only like 3% geniuses.
Right. The mind will, like soil, it will give back to you whatever you plant in it.
Yeah.
Well, and that fits perfectly into that point about not, children. That's tough with children because they're so small, they don't understand that they're being boxed in. But don't internalize limitations or negativity.
Yeah. I mean, we receive constantly something today. Constantly. I mean, there's another article which is kind of interesting. I wanted to touch base on today, which says something that I do, and I say it, and I think that in today's society, the worst thing you can do psychologically, and I guess they've made studies on this, is actually go into your internet or your iPhone and scroll through the news.
Oh, yeah.
And, basically most news are very, very negative. So, it goes back to these people that have cancer and ignore it. If you ignore all this stuff, it's going to be the same. And it goes back to the book I recommended. Right. Some things never change. And if you were born in 1900s, you'd be scared of something. And in 1920, you'd be scared of something. And in the 30s, you'd be scared of the Depression. In the 40s, about World War II. And then in the 60s, Vietnam. And today is global warming. And tomorrow will be, the seas are decaying, whatever. But we're here, and we have a choice to enjoy life. And the odds, and it goes from a book, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living.
Right.
95% of all things you worry about never happen.
Right.
And if you have that conviction, I can live with a 5%.
Right, exactly.
I hit all the red lights today. That was part of the 5%. I can live with that.
You still survived. You're still here.
I survived. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Excuse me. No, that is incredible stuff. And that brings us right back. It's funny, we talk about so many different things, and they all come back to the same themes, because that's what this show is all about. But the last great life lesson from rude people is the reminder, when someone's rude to you, it's a great reminder for yourself of the importance of being kind. And I got a great quote here. It says, "Kindness is a virtue, and it is one of the essential things in life. It shows other people that you care about them and takes away some of the pain, and suffering that they might be feeling. It can also help heal others, and everyone should always try to think about how their actions will affect others before taking to them." I think rude people have a lot to teach us, Norb.
Yeah, and there's a lot of studies made, and we haven't talked about this, maybe another time where we have more time. This has all been proven through brain waves. We have delta waves, theta waves, and alpha waves. And all those waves can be affected by, rejecting rudeness, accepting rudeness. It actually affects the gray areas of your brain, and it decays the brain, and you age faster. And, going back, and we used to talk when this thing first started, and it's a great way maybe just to end today. If you're positive, the average lifetime is 4 years more. Why wouldn't you be positive?
Absolutely.
You live 4 more years.
Absolutely.
Just by being positive. And that's a fact, scientific fact, okay? This is not some pie in the sky. And, going again to these guys that have cancer and ignore it, they're happy. They're talking about buying a new car, or they're talking about going someplace, and they got cancer. You know what? The hell with it. I'm gonna
keep going.
Living. Yeah.
I love it. Well, friends, we sure hope you've enjoyed our show today. We like to cover a lot of diverse things, but the theme is all the same, and that is being positive and optimistic, and what can we learn from life that's going to make our lives better. So we're not saying that you should put up with rude people, get away from rude people, but if someone is rude to you, in a little way to yourself, say thank you for reminding me of what's really important in life.
Yeah.
So, Norb, thank you, my friend, as always.
No, thank you. And I hope people get something out of this because I'm happy to share this stuff with
Absolutely.
little studies and also facts of life that we live, you know?
And if you got only one thing out of this show, click it or ticket. That's what we know. That's
Click
for
it
sure.
or ticket, yeah. And be kind. Especially
That's right.
If you're a policeman, please be nice to people when they're not that bad. You know, there's a lot of people that are not that
a lot
bad.
worse off, yeah.
And, you know, I know that you probably, before this guy gave me a ticket, he probably met 3 people that were nasty to him. And
you paid for it.
Yeah, and I got it, yeah.
Well, friends, for Norb Savanassini, this is Al Edwards. We hope you've enjoyed your show, and we will definitely see you next time. Thank you.
God bless.